Imagine standing in a cave overflowing with gold, jewels, and riches beyond your wildest dreams. All of it could be yours. But somewhere in the shadows, ruthless men are watching. Men who care nothing for the good you could do with such fortune, because their only goal is to take your life. The heavy jars arrived at Ali Barber's house under the cover of night. Gifts, the merchant claimed. Yet Morgiana's sharp eyes saw what others did not. In each jar, not oil, but men, ears silent, waiting, breathing. She moved without a sound, her hands steady as she poured boiling oil into every jar, one by one. Outside, the leader of the 40 thieves waited for his signal, but what he heard instead was silence. This is the tale of treasure, betrayal, and a woman whose courage turned certain death into a legendary victory. Stay with us for the full story of Ali Barber and the 40 thieves. Under the blazing sun of a desert afternoon, Ali Barber, a humble woodcutter, led his donkey along a narrow canyon path. The air shimmered with heat, and the wind carried a strange murmur, voices that did not belong to any man he knew. He froze. From behind a jagged outcrop, the sound grew clearer, deep, commanding words, almost like a chant. Carefully, Ali crept closer, pressing himself against the hot stone. Through a crack in the rocks, he saw them, 40 men, all dressed in dark robes and armed to the teeth, their horses pawing the ground. Their leader, a tall man with a golden embroidered cloak, raised his hands toward an enormous boulder. "Open, Sesame," he roared. The ground trembled. The boulder slid aside, revealing the black mouth of a cave. Inside, glittering heaps of gold, chests spilling with jewels, swords with emerald hilts, and treasures from distant lands. Ali's heart pounded. The thieves vanished into the cave, their laughter echoing like a pack of jackals. Ali pressed his back to the rock, torn between fear and curiosity. A poor man like him had never seen such wealth, and his mind raced with possibilities. But one thought struck harder than all the rest. If these men found him here, his life would be worth less than a grain of sand in the wind. Ali Barber crouched low, his pulse thundering in his ears. Moments later, the thieves emerged from the cave, their saddlebags bulging with loot. One by one, they mounted their horses. The leader gave a sharp command, "Eat close, Sesame." The boulder rumbled back into place, sealing the entrance as if it had never existed. Hooves thundered down the canyon, leaving only a cloud of dust. Ali stayed still, counting the heartbeats until the sound faded. Then, trembling but determined, he approached the massive stone. His lips formed the words he had just heard. "Open, Sesame." The earth seemed to sigh as the boulder slid away. A blast of cool air swept past him, carrying the scent of leather, spices, and something ancient. Ali stepped inside. His eyes widened at the sight. Mountains of gold coins, silk tapestries shimmering in the dim light, ivory chests bound with silver, and goblets overflowing with gemstones. The cave seemed endless, each corner hiding more wonders than the last. But Ali knew he could not be greedy. He filled his sack with just enough to change his family's life. A few handfuls of gold, a bolt of fine cloth, and a necklace that sparkled like captured sunlight. As he stepped back toward the entrance, his heart raced with both joy and fear. He whispered the magic words again. "Close, Sesame." The stone sealed shut, erasing all trace of the cave's existence. Ali hurried away, clutching his sack, unaware that this single act would set into motion a deadly game between him and the 40 thieves. By the time Oli Barber reached his humble home, the sun was sinking, painting the horizon in crimson and gold. His wife gasped when she saw the treasures spilling from the sack. "Oli, where did this come from?" she whispered, her eyes darting toward the door as if afraid someone might overhear. Ali hesitated, then told her everything: the canyon, the thieves, the magic words. She listened with wide-eyed wonder, but when he mentioned the 40 men, her expression darkened. "If they find out you've been inside their cave," she didn't finish the sentence. Still, they could not hide their excitement. That night, the small house glowed with the light of new oil lamps. A hot meal steamed on the table, and laughter filled the air. For the first time in years, Oli Barber felt like a man unchained from poverty. But word of sudden fortune travels fast. The next day, his brother Qasim arrived, eyes narrowing at the sight of the fine cloth and the gold coins stacked on the table. "Where did you get this?" he demanded. Ali tried to avoid the truth, but Qasim was relentless. Finally, Ali told him the secret, though he warned him to be careful, to take only what he needed. Qasim smiled, but there was a hunger in his eyes that unsettled Oli. By nightfall, Qasim was already on his way to the canyon, repeating the words open, sesame ear to himself. He thought only of riches, never of the men who guarded them. The moon hung low, casting silver light over the jagged rocks as Qasim slipped into the canyon. His heart raced, not from fear, but from anticipation. He reached the towering boulder, placed his hand against its cold surface, and whispered, "Open, sesame." The stone groaned and shifted. A breath of cool air rushed past him, carrying the scent of metal and old dust. Before him stretched a cavern unlike anything he had imagined. Torches flickered along the walls, their light dancing on mountains of gold coins, jeweled goblets, and silken carpets. Emeralds lay scattered like pebbles, and golden crowns sat upon ancient chests. Qasim stepped inside, his eyes drinking in the wealth. He began filling his sacks with frantic greed, gold first, then gems, then fine fabrics. The piles seemed endless. The more he took, the more he wanted. He laughed aloud, the sound echoing through the cave. Why should Oli Barber have this secret? He thought, it should be mine, all mine. He stuffed the sacks until they bulged, the straps straining under the weight. But when he turned to leave, his mind went blank. He stared at the stone entrance, the magic words suddenly gone from his memory. "Open." "Barley?" "No." "Open." "Oats?" "Open." Panic gripped him. Outside, a faint sound grew louder, the steady, rhythmic crunch of boots on gravel. The thieves were returning. Qasim's breath quickened. The torchlight seemed to dim. The walls of gold now looked like prison bars. And then, shadows moved in the entrance. 40 of them. The leader of the thieves stepped into the cavern first, tall, broad-shouldered, his face hidden beneath a black scarf. The flicker of his torch revealed Qasim frozen in place, clutching his bulging sacks like a child clinging to stolen sweets. Well, where the leader's voice was deep, mocking. "Looks like we've caught ourselves a little rat." Qasim's lips trembled. I was only." "Silence," the leader barked, the cavern ringing with his voice. The thieves spread out, circling him like wolves. One kicked the sacks from his hands, spilling a glittering rain of gold across the stone floor. Another pressed a curved dagger to his chest. Kasim's breath came in shallow gasps. His mind screamed for escape, but there was nowhere to run. "You know our secret," the leader said, stepping closer. "And for that, you will never leave this cave." Two men grabbed Kasim by the arms. The leader raised his blade high, its edge catching the torchlight, and with one swift motion, the cave fell silent. The gold at Kasim's feet was stained dark. His lifeless body crumpled to the ground, and the thieves dragged it to the far corner, leaving it for the vultures of the night. The leader turned to the others. "Hide the body well. Then we will see who else knows of this place." His gaze was cold, dangerous. Far away, Ali Barber slept peacefully, unaware that his brother's greed had just set a deadly trap in motion. By morning, the sun spilled gold across the rooftops of the village, but in Ali Barber's home, the mood was heavy. Kasim's wife paced the courtyard, wringing her hands. "He didn't come home last night," as she whispered, her voice trembling. Ali Barber frowned. His brother was greedy, yes, but reckless enough to stay out all night? Something was wrong. He saddled his mule and set off toward the hills. The desert wind hissed in his ears, carrying with it the faint scent of dust and something darker, fear. At the base of the cliff, he found nothing but rocks and silence. He called Kasim's name, his voice echoing weakly. Then he noticed something strange, faint footprints in the sand, leading toward the same patch of rock where Ali Barber had once hidden in the shadows. His pulse quickened. He approached, whispering the words he thought he'd never use again. "Open. Sesame." The stone groaned and split apart. Inside, the cavern lay still, or too still. The air was thick with the metallic tang of gold, and something else. In the corner, hidden under a heap of rags, he saw it. A pale hand, limp, lifeless. Ali Barber's heart dropped. He pulled the cloth away, revealing Kasim's body, cold, his face frozen in terror. For a moment, the world blurred, and grief nearly buckled his knees. But then another thought struck him, sharp as a knife. The thieves would return. And if they found him here, he would share his brother's fate. He had to think fast. Ali Barber's breath came fast, every sound in the cavern echoing too loudly in his ears. The thought of the thieves returning clawed at his mind. He wrapped Kasim's body in the rough cloth, trying to ignore the weight and the cold stiffness beneath it. The mule outside shuffled nervously, sensing danger. Ali Barber dragged the bundle toward the entrance, his muscles straining. Every few moments, he paused, listening. The desert was still, but the stillness felt wrong, like the pause before a storm. He reached the mouth of the cave and glanced back at the piles of gold, glittering like 1,000 eyes in the gloom. For a heartbeat, the old temptation whispered to him, "Take more, no one will know." But one look at Kasim's lifeless form crushed the thought. As soon as they were outside, he whispered, "It close. Sesame." The rock sealed shut, erasing the entrance as if it had never been. Ali Barber mounted the mule, urging it forward. The hooves thudded softly over the sand, but each step felt slower, heavier. Then, a sound. Faint but growing. Hooves. Many of them. The rhythm was quick, angry. Ali Barber's heart leapt to his throat. He guided the mule off the main trail, plunging into a narrow, rocky pass. From the shadows, he watched. The thieves rode into view, 40 of them, cloaked in black, blades flashing in the sun. They reined in before the cliff face, dismounted, and spoke the dreaded words. The stone groaned open. Ali Barber gripped the mule's reins tighter. If they discovered Qasim's fate now, the hunt would begin. Inside the cavern, the thieves moved like shadows, their boots crunching over coins and jewels. At first, the leader barked orders to check the treasure. The men obeyed, counting, weighing, searching for any sign of loss. Then a shout tore through the gloom. A thief near the center pointed to a dark smear across the stone floor, dried blood. They followed the trail deeper into the cavern. It ended abruptly, where the sand had been disturbed, as if something large had been dragged away. The leader's eyes narrowed. "Someone's been here." His voice was low, but every man heard the venom in it. Another thief knelt, sniffing the air like a hunting dog. Not long ago, the blood is still fresh. Murmurs spread. Someone dared to speak the truth. "It's the man who tried to steal before, the one we found trapped here." The leader's gaze turned to steel. "Then he's dead now, but someone took him." He paced, boots grinding against the gold. "Find out who. Search every village, every road. And when you do," his voice dropped into a growl, "leave nothing standing." Outside, Ali Barber guided the mule farther into the twisting canyons, unaware that a storm of blades was now sweeping toward his world. The thieves sealed the cave and scattered into the desert like a swarm of vultures, and their hunger was for blood. By the time Ali Barber returned home, the sun had dipped low, bleeding crimson across the horizon. The streets were quiet, too quiet. Women gathered water with quick, nervous glances. Children played close to doorsteps, as if the open road had become dangerous. Then came the sound. Hooves. Not the steady rhythm of a merchant's caravan, but a pounding, relentless drumbeat. Ali Barber stepped into the shadow of his doorway just as they appeared, the 40 thieves, riding black horses, their faces veiled, eyes glittering with malice. Dust swirled in their wake, and the smell of leather and steel filled the air. They rode slowly through the village, not speaking, but watching. Watching every face. A mother clutched her child tighter. A merchant lowered his stall shutters. Ali Barber's heart pounded. He knew why they were here. They were hunting. From his hidden spot, he caught the leader's gaze for a split second, cold, calculating, as if measuring the worth of every soul in the street. The riders passed on toward the edge of the village, but Ali Barber could feel it. This was not the end. They would return. That night, he gathered Morgiana and whispered the truth. "If they find out it was me, we are all dead. We must be ready, before they come back." The oil lamps flickered as the desert wind howled outside, carrying with it the scent of steel and vengeance. Morgiana's eyes gleamed in the dim candlelight. She was no ordinary servant. She had lived long enough to know that survival belonged to those who could think faster than danger could strike. "They will not come like merchants," she whispered. "They will come like shadows, when the moon is high." Ali Barber paced the room, his hands trembling. What can we do? We cannot fight 40 men. Morgiana stood, smoothing her simple dress as if the moment required ceremony. We won't fight them. We will make them believe we are not worth the fight at all. She slipped into the storage room, her footsteps soundless, and returned with an old, worn merchant's map. She laid it flat, pointing at the narrow streets and hidden alleys of the village. We will control what they see, what they hear. We will lead them where we want them to go, and then they will leave with nothing. Oli Barber frowned. And if they do not leave? Morgiana's lips curved in a small, dangerous smile. Then we make them vanish. A cold gust rattled the shutters. Outside, the moon's silver light spilled across the sands, and far in the distance, faint hoofbeats echoed again, or perhaps it was only Oli Barber's imagination. She blew out the candle, leaving only darkness. Go to sleep, master. Tomorrow, we prepare. The next evening, as the sun bled its last crimson light over the horizon, a caravan approached Oli Barber's house. Tall camels, their bells chiming softly, swayed under the weight of large oil jars. At the head of the procession rode a man dressed in fine silks, his turban studded with a single emerald that caught the dying light. Merchants from the east, the man called with a courtier's bow, his voice smooth as honey. We seek shelter for the night, good sir. Oli Barber, ever hospitable, stepped forward. You are welcome in my home. But Morgiana's sharp gaze slid over the jars. They were too large, too heavy for oil alone. And the men who handled them moved with a predator's caution, their eyes sweeping every shadow. Her instincts screamed. As the merchant spoke with Oli Barber, she circled to the rear of the caravan. Pausing, she laid her palm on one of the jars. A faint rustle came from within, and a stifled cough. Her heart pounded. The jars were hiding men. She forced a warm smile and returned to Oli Barber's side. I will prepare the storeroom for our guests, as she said sweetly. Inside, she moved quickly. Every step, every decision had to be precise. Tonight, the game would be played on her terms. She fetched water, lit lanterns, and kept her eyes on the leader of the caravan, who returned her gaze with a flicker of suspicion. Somewhere in the night, the desert wind shifted, carrying with it the scent of dust and danger. The trap was already in motion, but whose trap it would be was yet to be decided. Morgiana's pulse quickened, but her face remained a mask of calm. She knew if even a flicker of alarm betrayed her, Oli Barber would be dead before dawn. The merchant, none other than the leader of the 40 thieves, chatted easily with her master, spinning a tale of trade routes and distant ports, while his men rested inside the jars, waiting for his signal to strike. She slipped into the kitchen, moving like a shadow. The heavy clay stove still held embers from the evening meal. She stoked them into a fierce flame, her mind racing. There was no time to fetch guards, no chance to flee. The battle would be fought here, in silence, before the thieves could emerge. She filled a great iron cauldron with oil and placed it over the fire. The golden liquid shimmered, then hissed as it began to bubble. The air filled with its heavy scent. Morgiana's hands were steady, her breathing measured. In the storeroom, she pours to the first jar, whispering, "Is it time?" in a low, teasing voice. A muffled reply came, a "not yet." Her lips curved in a grim smile. She lifted the lid, seized the cauldron's handle, and poured the scalding oil inside. A strangled scream erupted, then silence. She moved to the next jar, and the next, her steps swift, her resolve iron. By the time she reached the final jar, the house was still. Outside, the false merchant still drank tea with Oli Barber, unaware that his army was melting into the darkness. Only when the last lid closed did Morgiana allow herself a breath. She had turned their own trap into a tomb. The leader of the 40 thieves sipped his tea slowly, masking his impatience. The moon had climbed higher, and he knew the moment of attack should have come. His ears strained for the signal, the rustle of men emerging from the jars, the rush of feet, the clash of steel. But the courtyard remained eerily silent. No shadow moved, no whisper reached him. The hairs on his neck prickled. "Perhaps they wait for me," he said smoothly, rising from his seat. "I should check on my men." Oli Barber, unsuspecting, nodded politely, gesturing toward the storeroom. Morgiana's eyes followed the leader's steps, her expression unreadable. The man crossed the courtyard, his boots tapping against the stones. He approached the first jar, lifting the lid with casual confidence, and froze. The stench of burned oil and death hit him like a blow. His heart lurched. He ripped open the next jar, then another. The truth crashed over him. His army was gone, slain without a sound. A low growl rose in his throat. His carefully laid plan, months in the making, destroyed in a single night. And worse, someone in this house had outwitted him. He turned sharply toward the main hall, his eyes narrowing on Morgiana. She stood in the shadows, her hands folded, yet her gaze burned with quiet defiance. For the first time in years, the leader of the thieves felt something unfamiliar: fear. The leader's pulse thundered in his ears as he stepped back from slaughtered jars. Rage burned hot in his chest, yet a cold instinct told him, "Stay alive, or all is lost." His men were gone, only he remained. From the shadows, Morgiana's gaze followed him, sharp as a drawn blade. She did not speak, but he felt her presence like a hunter watching prey. Oli Barber approached, puzzled. "Is something wrong, friend?" he asked with polite concern. The leader forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Nothing at all. But it seems I must leave tonight. Urgent business calls me." His voice was calm, but inside, a storm raged. He walked toward the gate, every step measured, yet his mind already wove the threads of revenge. She knew. She destroyed them. She will pay. Outside, the cool night air bit at his skin. He paused under the moonlight, his hand tightening on the hilt of his curved dagger. "You may have won this night," he whispered to the silent courtyard behind him, "but the game is far from over." Mounting his horse, he spurred it into the darkness. The hooves pounded like war drums as he vanished into the desert. Behind him, the wind carried the faint scent of burned oil and the bitter promise of vengeance. Weeks passed, and the city whispered of the vanished thief. Oli Barber returned to his peaceful trade, though Morgiana's watchful eyes never softened. She knew shadows had a way of returning. One night, under a moon drowned in storm clouds, the city gates creaked open. A merchant caravan entered, its lead trader cloaked in fine silks, his face half hidden beneath a jeweled turban. But Morgiana felt it immediately, the same burning gaze from that night of fire and oil. The leader had returned. His plan was flawless: enter as a wealthy merchant, gain Oli Barber's trust, and strike when the household slept. But Morgiana's instincts coiled like a viper ready to strike. She served him wine with a dancer's grace, her bracelets chiming softly. As she spun in a slow, hypnotic circle, her hand slipped to the dagger hidden in her sash. The moment the leader's hand reached for his blade, she struck, swift, precise, merciless. His eyes widened in disbelief as steel bit deep. The jeweled turban fell, revealing the face twisted with hatred and surprise. Oli Barber rushed forward, but it was over. The last of the 40 lay still, his vengeance ended before it began. Morgiana stood over him, breath steady, her voice calm, as some debts must be paid in full. The household rejoiced, but Oli Barber knew one truth, that his life, his fortune, perhaps even his soul, had been saved twice by the courage and cunning of one woman. And so, before friends and family, he swore to make Morgiana part of his family forever. The tale of Oli Barber and the 40 thieves became a story of treasure and betrayal, but most of all, of loyalty repaid in gold and blood.